This episode of the Extreme Ag Show is presented by Concept AgriTek.
Cowboy is the game changer, getting it in through the leaves and into the plant circulatory system. That's why this product is so effective at delivering both calcium and boron to plants at critical times when they need it the most.
It's not often that the guys get together. Today, Matt and Temple take a little trip out to Iowa and visit their pal Kelly to check out his operation.
So glad you're here. How are you?
Good to see you.
Kelly Garrett.
It's a great opportunity for these three friends to connect and share their wealth of knowledge with each other.
So show us, let's see all these secrets back here. I want to see the secrets.
Yeah,
Don't you want to see the secrets?
All right, so
I love to go to these shops and look at what everybody's doing different. That's a lot of Integra.
That's a lot of Integra because it's on that side, and there's some back there too. We've already looked around.
Yeah, we've been snooping a little bit.
Well, you know, the head of Integra is BJ Shaban. He and I grew up together. They got a lot of great numbers. Their seed treatment is good. You know, I don't want to plant a lot of rib. You know, I don't want the refuge in a bag. I want to plant, and they offer that. The numbers that they offer when we trace them back to corn states, things like that, good numbers, good serviceability.
I'll be honest with you, we started with 12 bags, and it was like third highest yield on our farm. Last year we got 24 bags, maybe, two different varieties. The 12 original bags, 6811, which mimics kind of a 7027 bare seed. You know, it's really good in our area, long season. And it was second, third, fourth. It was in the top 5 of our varieties. All of them close, but it's up there with all the big boys. This year we planted 250 acres, I think, of 6811. We stuck with that same variety. What you said about rib, I done got in this conversation, so I've learned some stuff that you probably already know. The guy sent me seed and it was rib. And I was like, I didn't order rib. He said, well, that's all we can get it in. So I called Evans and I said, tell me about what you think about rib. He said, go find every weak plant, dig it up, it's gonna be the rib.
Yep. So the Integra, the option for the numbers, the quality of service that we get, the ability to get the weight of corn. You know, I want a certain weight of the corn in every bag. Yes, BJ and Micah do a great job for us. And we plant more of it than we do everything, and I'm really happy.
So how far spread is Integra seed across the country? I mean, is it available for me out there?
Yeah, they've got a guy in North Carolina.
The most interesting piece is when we're talking about the rib. Because honestly, Mike Evans is exactly right. You could pick out every purple seed. Like you got a crappy plant, purple seed. Every time. Every time. Well, and then you can go I tell you what, I'll give you, even if it makes it through all of it and it doesn't look crappy, and you go out there and you're harvesting corn, you're like, what is wrong with that corn? Like once in a while it's messed up. You get out and you can find every one of them, you peel them back, and the ear will be junk, not pollinated, something's wrong with it. I mean, we're taking it on the chin.
What great marketing. They got rid of some junk seed and raised the price.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what they did.
How are we going to break 442 with?
Never.
I agree.
What I did, and when I'm treating my own seed, putting Pivot Bio on it, and so I dumped the first box in there. Well, I'd already dumped it into the treatment, you know, so I couldn't give the first box back. But that's when I started researching it, you know, because it don't do me any good. And everybody seems to tend to want to go to the rib because of just what you said. It makes them money.
It's easy.
So what I did was increase my population from 34 to 36 to offset those junky years is what I done. Now that may help me or hurt me depending on how close I'm getting to
It's probably actually going to hurt you because you got that many more weed plants in that field. Yeah.
I will say this, in my straight roundups, a lot of times they'll be better than the traded corn.
Absolutely.
Because they're not taking the energy.
Traits are defense. Yeah. And with our in-furrow program and putting insecticide out there, then we don't need the traits. Yeah. And the traits are defense. I want to play offense.
Well, I can take a straight roundup of those top varieties and out-yield the traded corn.
10 out of 10 times if you manage the pest. I agree.
But they just don't. You know,
and the corn's $50 a bag cheaper.
At least that much cheaper. Yeah. But see, they don't have a lot of that because I guess just the Delta, I don't know if Chad's the same way, but you know, there's not a big market for straight roundup corn.
No, everybody wants the traits because it's just like the rib. It makes it easy. Everybody wants to hit the easy button.
Yep.
Sometimes it feels like I'd like to hit it a little bit more than we do, but it pays to not hit it. It pays to not hit the easy button. Let's go look at the wheat.
Let's go.
Amino Grow is an exciting new product put out by Concept AgriTek. What we've seen is an increase in fruiting sites as well as branching, and this has equated to yield.
Spot less. Introducing the cleanup for tar spot, gray leaf spot, southern rust, and more. Novel next generation Adastrio fungicide from FMC broadens your spectrum and strengthens your residual foliar disease control. Protect your cornfields with a proprietary combination of 3 modes of action. Visit your FMC retailer or at astrio.ag.fmc.com to clean up this season.
Introducing Demco's newest dual auger grain cart design. Now equipped with the front folding auger and available in right side or left side unload options. Featuring Demco's corner auger design for optimal visibility. With a 22-inch vertical auger, unload at speeds of 600 bushels per minute. Demco. Outpace harvest time every time.
Some farmers I know swear by a name. Say they'd never operate anything else. Well, here are a few names for my Fendt 900 tractor. Fuel Saver, Time Maximizer, Game Changer. I like those names.
BioHealth is a product by Concept AgriTek made up of a consortium of beneficial biology that actually colonize the plant and boost the plant's immune system from the inside.
Next up, Kelly takes Temple and Matt out to his plant food operation. It's a real eye-opener on Kelly's advances in sustainable farming.
So this is the original plant food lagoon. When it's full, it'd be 1.5 million gallons or so. And we're putting on 400 or 500 gallons an acre. So 1.5 million divided by 500, it'd be like 3,000 acres when it's full.
How do you haul it all out of here? So tankers come in?
Tankers come in, and then see that PVC pipe over there? Yeah. They load out over there. And the pump is out.
How quick can you load a truck?
12 minutes.
12 minutes, load a truck. They go straight to the field.
Yep, onto the applicator.
Tell me about how this plant food, how do you get it? Like, tell me the whole circle.
All right, so Feed Energy is the name of the company that we work for. Feed Energy takes the byproduct out of a soybean plant. First, they take the hull off, and we've got those too because we use them for feed.
Right.
Okay. They take the hull off, and then they crush the bean, and they get the meal and the oil out. And when they're done with all of that, there's a greasy, nasty substance left called soap stock. And Feed Energy takes the soap stock from Bunge and other soybean plants, and we truck it into them. They put sulfuric acid with it, they heat it up to 200 degrees, and then it'll separate. And they pull out the 10% of oil, approximately 10% of oil that's left in there. The process that the soybean crusher uses can't get that last 10% of oil. So Feed Energy is what's called an acidulator, and they're acidulating that soap stock. They can take that last 10% of soybean oil out, and they make liquid feed for 75 million hogs and poultry. And they take out the other 10% as the solids. That's called MGR, and that's a high-fat ingredient into a fat cattle ration. All right. So then the other 80% of the soap stock, they don't want. And we take that from them and we bring it home and we store it in these lagoons, and it's our main source of fertility.
So this is a purely organic fertilizer, right?
It comes from soybean seed.
It's like, yeah.
So this is like the epitome of sustainable farming.
Right.
This thing makes a complete circle.
Last year's soybean crop is this year's fertility.
And cow feed. So what Kelly's doing here is probably more sustainable than anything there is anywhere.
Right.
And then from the cattle, his cow feed goes into his GLC beef, and then he sells that as retail beef in a store, farm to table from there.
That's a big story.
It's a big story.
It's a big story. And the fact that all of this is done and there's no synthetic fertilizers at all with this.
None. We don't put on anything. Zero. We put on some nitrogen, and we're even working
so
towards that.
So what's the analysis?
500 gallons is 15 nitrogen, 100 phosphorus, 20 potassium, 100 sulfur. And there's 920 micronutrients. There's 170 pounds of organic carbon, all in 500 gallons. We've documented 40 bushel yield gains in corn, 20 bushel yield gains in beans versus synthetic fertility.
How much more efficient do you two think an organic fertilizer like this is versus a synthetic fertilizer?
Like poultry litter or this, yeah, probably.
It's 10 times.
I think
So
that
it's 80
I think that's really cool.
So the farmer is getting $180 worth of fertilizer for $80, and there will be a yield gain to it.
The majority of your fertilizer comes through the roots, not through a foliar. Foliars are great as a Band-Aid, you know, and you can do the ROI on them, they're fine. I'm putting $36 on my beans with the airplane cost. That's not but like 3.5 bushel. You know, that's really easy to get, but your base fertility comes from the roots. You know, Rob always said this, if God intended for, you know, fertilizer to come from the top of the plant, he'd put the roots on the top.
Rob's right.
And I agree with that.
Right. You need to have a balanced soil that has available nutrients, and a foliar application is to trigger that plant to bring that in through the roots.
That's right.
That's a trigger. Yeah. It's a trigger. That's what a foliar app is. It's not about how much you're putting on. It's a trigger. Like Lee talked about, you just need to touch it and tell the plant what to go get. But you've got to have the soil balanced and the nutrients available in the soil
to do that
after you trigger the plant. From a sustainable standpoint, the thing I'm most proud of, there's 24 million gallons of this available every year from Feed Energy. We take it all, we spray it all. We're removing the waste from us, like, you know, you call it the system, because this would be treated and dumped if it wasn't for us.
Where would it go?
I don't know. They would take it to a digester, a waste management plant. If it wasn't for us, we are removing the waste from the system that's equal to a city of 200,000 people.
Wow.
And we're using it for fertilizer.
That's incredible.
200,000 people. That's how much waste this is. And I didn't know that until the engineer that we work with that helps us build the lagoons, he said, you're taking the waste out of the system equal to 200,000 people.
Wow.
That's incredible.
That's a big deal. That's a huge number.
That's a huge number.
Yep.
Adding Raytheon into your in-fur application or even an over-the-top application around V3, V4 can do wonders in helping that plant navigate tough soil conditions as far as nutrient tie-up is concerned.
Control the toughest weeds with overlapping residuals. Lock in the longest-lasting control for your soybean fields. Authority brand herbicides, such as Authority Edge Herbicide and Authority Supreme Herbicide, combine the industry's most effective Group 14 and 15 active ingredients for a clean start and long-lasting residual control. Following up 14 to 28 days later with a post-application of Anthem Max Herbicide through V6 establishes a heavy-duty, economical, overlapping residual program.
Claims are good and all, but I'm more interested in results. My Fendt Momentum planter delivers them. The only planter with automatic tire pressure adjustments, weight transfer across its frame, and inline center tandem wheels that eliminate pinch rows. It's just another way I know Fendt's got my bottom line top of mind.
Sweet Success has been in the product lineup of Concept AgriTek for a while. We've seen it do a lot of things that you wouldn't think a blackstrap molasses product would do. Anytime you can increase the bricks content of your plant, the more healthy it's going to be.
None of these guys are strangers to pushing the limits on their farms. And when they get together and start sharing ideas, the sky's the limit.
So, you know, we've been talking all winter about balancing the soil and the plant from a chemistry perspective. And I obviously don't mean chemicals, I mean elements, I mean nutrients, I mean the ratios. Wingrove even came up with the term calibrated agronomy, which I think is pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
And in this field, we're going to a radical example of it or a radical trial of it. You know, much like when I planted only 34,000 beans per acre next to the 150, whoever would have thought the 34,000 would out yield it. Now, I don't know that that's going to happen here. This plant obviously has no nitrogen. This plant probably has 185 pounds of nitrogen This plant looks better. The root system looks better. Everything looks better. So I'm not suggesting at all that the zero nitrogen plant's going to win. What that plant has in the 2x2 is carbon and sulfur. It's got more micros on it than this plant. We validated last year with soil test how much nitrogen is being mineralized in our soil. And the chemist / agronomist that Evans and I worked with, he looked at how much nitrogen is mineralized in our soil, and he's like, why do you guys even use synthetic nitrogen? I mean, that's crazy, which I still think it is, but he talked about we needed like 30 gallons of plant food with 3 gallons of fulvic acid and a whole bunch of micros. And I said, well, you gave numbers on the other, how many micros? And he said, how big a check do you want to write? Because that's what you need to balance the nitrogen. I really think we're onto something. I don't think zero nitrogen is the answer, but we're really trying to achieve that balance and see what happens.
But Chad says this all the time. You got to start with the extreme. So you went from nitrogen to zero.
Yes.
You're not expecting this plant to yield probably even close to that plant.
My dad says that plant's going to be 100 bushel less. Yeah. He might be right.
And 100 bushel less, if you're spending 140 bushel to get to that, that's 40 bushels you save plus what you do by reducing your nitrogen.
Exactly.
So it's not about the high yield. I talk about that all the time. High yield is not 100 bushel beans. Mm-hmm. If you can make 50 bushel beans on zero fertilizer and I make 100 on too much fertilizer, you're better off than I am.
My ROI could be better.
Maybe we should stop talking about high yield. We should start talking about high ROI.
Yeah.
Because that's the pile of money.
We're all after.
The pile of money is the most important pile.
Yep.
I have so much confidence and optimism in this because chemistry is math to me, so it isn't a bunch of guessing, it's math. And in years past in this field, this is the original year field. This is where I won the first irrigated state title in 2016. And they said at tassel, corn needs 100 pounds of nitrogen. So we put 100 pounds of nitrogen through this field at tassel. No yield response, never caught it in the tissue. Now we're on to sap testing because we questioned the tissue, but I still would think you would have seen something in the tissue. Well, we thought, well, your drip is 16 inches, it's too deep. So the next year we Y dropped it. Nothing.
Really?
Nothing. No, we're not picking up anything, but it's because the ground is releasing so much nitrogen. I believe that now. We should have been Y dropping plant food and humics and fulvics and micros probably. Yep. And maybe that's what,
And go away from the other stuff.
And what we're doing in this wheat is kind of a research plot. It's showing us that. And we're very balanced. And again, tremendous amount of micros, still not enough. They're balanced, but we still don't have them high enough in the plant. And so I have a lot of confidence here and optimism. I'm excited. Have you ever heard of the fungi to bacteria ratio? You want it to be 1 to 1, okay? You want 7 times carbon for every 1 part nitrogen, okay? But to have that be correct, you need 1 part fungi to 1 part bacteria. I'm 1 part fungi to 1,765 bacteria. That's from synthetic fertility, and that's from the high bicarbonates in the water, and a myriad of other things. And I said, well, what do we need to do to correct that? And he said, you probably need to start out at 50 to 1 carbon to nitrogen to have something to feed all that bacteria to end up at a net 7 to 1. And I don't necessarily know what fungi to bacteria ratio is, but when it's supposed to be 1 to 1 and it's 1 to 1,700,
you're out of whack.
You're out of whack. And that's why I come back to the low-hanging fruit, and that's why we're attempting to do this.
Don't go away. In part 2 of their Tailgate Talk, find out what makes Matt Miles say,
that'll be the gravy on a tater right there, boys.
Go long for season-long foliar disease protection that starts at plant. Active ingredient flutriafol moves through your corn plants as they grow for inside-out protection from roots to tassel. A single at-plant application provides comparable performance in corn yield protection to that of VTR1 foliar fungicides against diseases like gray leaf spot, northern corn leaf blight, common rust, and more.
Some farmers I know swear by a name, say they'd never operate anything else. Well, here are a few names for my Fendt 900 tractor. Fuel Saver, Time Maximizer, Game Changer. I like those names.
In part 2 of this Tailgate Talk, the boys discuss nitrogen reduction, micronutrients, and how they get what all farmers want, a better return on investment.
Well, we've got reduction tests, and you may have some too, down to 50%. And when you're talking about the 100 pounds of, pre-tassel or tassel, this is the first year we hadn't done that, and it's really making me nervous. But what the research I've seen, the data I've seen, we're putting out too much nitrogen. And so if we can get to that 0.6, 0.7, maybe even less than that,
all
that's a
that's
big
going to be
deal.
variable and change according to soil types. So out there where I am, timing, you know what I mean? So where I agree with this, and I think that this is an awesome study, and maybe I'm not quite as excited, you know what I mean? I hate to be that guy, is what Kelly is here, because I've been down that road.
You're further ahead.
Yeah.
We've been down that road, and we've seen that, and we've done the nitrogen reduction. We can't get away with it but we don't have the soil that's making it either. We don't have this soil, so it's very different. So he's going to start at a different playing field than what I was. Exactly. So when I go and do this, I got dirt like you got with low CECs. Nitrogen gets away from us so fast, so I can't do anything but spoon feed as many different times as my checkbook can stand.
My highest field last year was my lowest supplied nitrogen. Yeah, my very highest field, my highest yield. Now, was that a fluke, or was that because?
I don't know. You had a pretty bad year. You had worst heat in 65, 70 years at your place. So I'm not going to call that a fluke, because that should be adverse. It should be the opposite way.
Well, in our clay soils, if you look at our samples, soil samples on our clay soils, they're off the charts on potassium, phosphorus, because they're retaining the nutrients.
Yep.
But they're, number one, they won't release them as well. Number two, we have to plant them so much later, because they're wet. So we don't get the yield enhancement that you would get.
So I have a thought. So what happens if you have ground like your heavy clay that retains, your nutrients better? Kelly's got ground out here that he retains and can, kind of bring some stuff back to the top, per se. What happens if we started using products? Is there a chance that a heavier rate of some of these products than what is on the, I hate to say we're going off label, because we're not trying to go off label, but we're trying to figure stuff out. What's to say that we shouldn't try a little heavier rate on some of them soils that are retaining that? Because it's not the fact that you can't get it, you can't obtain it. It's in your dirt, but you can't get it out.
Well, and going off label on a product like a stress mitigator or a fertility enhancer, they've got those labels on there for cost.
Right.
It's not because you put out too much and it runs off. So there's some safe ways that you could double that rate, on these certain products, and it may be safer for the environment than the rate they give us.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, we could get more out of that than we even realize. So, I mean, let's say that in your nitrogen reduction, you've got this plant here that looks great and looks healthy. It's got 0 nitrogen on it. You got this one that you spent a pile of money on, and you went out there with a big, heavy micronutrient pack with some stuff that would help release the stuff in the ground, and then all of a sudden,
We did that. I can't remember if we did it here, but we did. I called Galen and Stephanie, at AgriLiquid, and I said, how much Micro 1000 can we safely put? I want to put it in the furrow. People are putting in a pint or a quart, and we put in a gallon. We put in a gallon in furrow to try to provide it, because we know it's the good ground that's going to higher yielding ground for us and things like that, because we're trying to balance. I believe when we find the balance, there might be a time where we are ramping up the nitrogen, because we're going to bring everything up with it.
but you got to feel, we got to find the bottom first.
We have to find the balance
Well, this
first.
is the bottom.
Yeah. We got to find balance.
That's normal.
When we find the balance and we find the ratios, they're going to be different every year because of variable weather and things like that. But when we find the balance, and then we can raise everything together.
And then you start doing the math, and the ROI won't lie to you.
No, it won't.
It's just math after that.
Maybe less yield, but
Maybe.
it'll be more positive ROI.
To begin with, there will be less yield with a more positive ROI, but when we figure out what we need to do,
We could have
and we
both.
raise things up, and there will be a time when the yield is higher, the costs are higher, and the ROI is much higher.
That'll be the gravy on a tater, right
That's
there,
right.
boys.
That's when we'll reach 500 bushel corn.
It changes everything, so says Indiana corn grower Nathan Davis about innovative Xyway LFR fungicide from FMC. Xyway brand fungicides are the first and only at-plant corn fungicides to provide unprecedented season-long inside-out foliar disease protection.
Precision is understanding the potential hidden within. Decoding the specific nutritional needs of your crop. Maximizing every nutrient and getting the most out of your yield. We break down the science in a way that works for your crops and for you. Apply less and expect more with Precision Crop Nutrition from Agro Liquid.
And for the last stop on the tour, Kelly brings the guys out to a place on his farm that is dear to his heart.
This farm is a big deal to me. It's the first farm I bought when I was 25 years old. It's 320 acres. And my great-great-grandfather bought this half section in 1904 and put my 17-year-old great-grandfather here. And he bought the half section to the north of it. So he bought a full section, but there was a road in between it at that time, and put his 19-year-old brother there. There was 10 kids in the family. But the story is from my grandmother that these were the two physically biggest boys, so he put them out on the farm and the other 8 kids got to go to Iowa State. So can you imagine being out here in 1904 in these hills like this, and that creek we came across down there, it was a swamp, and she told me that they had 2 oxen and they hooked a big iron ball to them, and they pulled that iron ball down through here to get the water to start running, and now you can see the ditch. So,
no kidding.
And she said that started the water running, and there's a dam down here that I'll show you, and they put that dam in the 60s, and on the east side of that dam, it's 50 foot down. And on the west side of that dam, it's silted full. And when I was a kid, there was water there and stuff. It silted full over time and just became a small stream of water. We've now dug it out. It's 14 foot deep. I estimate there's like 1 million gallons of water there, and that's what we use to irrigate the 45 acres here. My grandfather died when I was 9. During World War II, he built bombers in Buffalo, and then came back to the farm. And he was 4 or 5 years older than her. I can't remember exactly, but they got married when she was 18, and they had to ride the bus to Omaha for the honeymoon because of gas rationing because of the war. And then they moved out here, and she grew up with electricity in town. And the first 2 years they lived here didn't have electricity. Do you think Caroline and SK would move to the farm with you? No electricity?
No way. No chance.
And
there's a good chance they're gonna move away now.
And so she moved out here, no electricity. Mother-in-law lived with them. And then when she was 20, electricity came to these parts. And they put electricity in the house. And she said the thing that we messed up on, we put like one plug in a room because you just didn't think it was gonna be that big of a deal. Yeah. She talked about picking corn by hand and things like that. She was a tremendous woman. She was 50 years older than me. She went to college to be a teacher, but then of course when you had kids and stuff, she stayed home, but she was so intelligent and so funny, and just the stories of talking to her. She just grew up so poor, and when she got older, she always wanted to volunteer and things like that, because people had helped her at her life, and she did not
pay it forward.
Yes, she wanted to pay it forward. I learned a lot from her. And she sold me this farm for $700 an acre when I was 25, and it was on a 20-year contract. And I said, well, Grandma, do you want me to pay for it? I said, what about at the end of it? What will you do for money at the end of it? And I was 25, she was 75, 20-year contract, like I said, and she said, I'll die before this contract's over. I don't want to live past that. And that was hard on me at 25. Yeah. And the last payment was due March 1st of 2020, and she died about December 20th, 2019, right before COVID and all those things like that. Wow. Yeah, she, one of the mentors of my life.
That's pretty awesome. Cool.
And like this timber and stuff like that, we've cleared a lot of trees to make more farm ground. And she told me, she said, it's your farm. When I was 25, she told me, it's your farm, you do what you want. But she said, I'd sure like to see that stay in trees. So this timber pasture that we're in, we won't push this out.
So you just keep this right in
Yep.
pasture, keep
This is-
bringing
yep.
which works good out for you anyway, because you got all these cattle.
Probably the
does.
most sentimental farm you have, right?
It is. You know, it's paid for. That's nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, my grandma and my family history here and things like that. That's the reason I brought you here today.
1904.
1904. So my family's been here for 119 years this summer.
That's incredible.
Yes, it's nice, and it's a rough old farm, but it raises good corn. The 388 bushel corn came from right down here on the north side of this creek. The first time I raised 300 bushel corn was down here in 2017, and the 388 bushel corn, the third highest ever in Iowa, was raised down over here on the north side of this creek. There's some pretty special dirt down in here. You got to get about 3/4 of a mile off a road. But
Where's the dirt not special out here?
Well, it's awful nice. But yeah, this is one of my favorite spots.
I can see why. I appreciate it, Kelly. This is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Magnesium is important in the plant. Magnesium is typically high in the soils around here, at least in our geography, especially in the river bottoms and the creek beds. It tends to be higher, and it's abundant in the soil, but it's not always plant available, and it's hard to get in the plant at times. One is magnesium is a double positive charge in the soil, so it's going to bind up pretty quick with a negative or whatever's in there and not be plant available. Two, it competes with other nutrients in the plant to come up. You know, if we got potassium racing in the plant, mag's gonna lag off just by nature of the beast. So magnesium is important, but we can't always get it plant available. And we're trying to figure out ways to correct that because it has a lot of importance in the plant, a lot to do with nutrient flow within the plant, keeping things moving, keeping things processing the plant, enzymatic reactions within the plant, and keeping things turning, so to speak. I mean, my analogy is, and it's a pretty crude one, but there's a reason they make milk of magnesia for humans, right? So just think of that, of root exudation and all that stuff. So, I mean, it keeps things moving up and down the plant. Key in all those enzymatic reactions that the plant needs to function. If you have too much magnesium in the soil, then it becomes a big binder, right? And it just ties up everything because it doesn't create enough airspace in that soil particle to hold anything. So it becomes a bully, so to speak, in the soil and pushes a lot of things out that won't be plant available. So you can fight that. We fight that on the river bottoms here, the Missouri River bottom. It's a big deal. Some of Kelly's creek beds and stuff are high mag, so we fight that. But you can get in spots where we don't have enough magnesium in these slopes, you know, where calcium's dominant. So we're still limited there because we don't have enough either way. So, and if we don't have either one of those in balance, you're gonna have some yield limiting issues.
Next week on the XtremeAg Show.
Last night about 7 o'clock, we had a line of thunderstorms come through. This farm's been hit with it a couple times before, but never this bad.